One of the most often used passages to condemn homosexuality is found in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22, which reads, "Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable." I think it's important for queer Christians to recognize that of all the so-called clobber passages in the Bible used to condemn homosexuality, in all likelihood, this passage probably does actually condemn a particular homosexual act, the act of anal intercourse. But what's more important for queer Christians today are the questions of the historical and social context of the passage, and how such a passage applies to us today. There are a few points that I think are important to make concerning these questions, and I believe the answers show that the homosexual prohibition in verse 22 of Leviticus 18 is not applicable to queer Christians today. Let me show you why I think this is the case. First, it is important to remember what the Bible is and what it is not. It is not a book of rules that we are required to follow. There are many other prohibitions in Leviticus and the rest of Scripture that nearly all Christians no longer follow. So why do some Christians single out this specific prohibition against homosexual anal intercourse? Could it simply be that some Christians retain this prohibition because our own culture is largely homophobic? The Bible is a record of the search for God of faithful men and women throughout history. It is not a rule book. Second, where is the mention of female homosexuality in these Levitical laws? It is not there. If homosexual relationships are wrong across the board, then we would expect to also see a prohibition against female homosexuality. Actually, this question and the wording of verse 22 itself leads me to my third point. The passage is worded in such a way that the act of anal penetration is what is being condemned. When we understand that most ancient cultures, the ancient Israelites included, considered females to be inferior to males, the passage begins to make more sense from a historical perspective. For a man to be penetrated by another man was shameful in ancient Hebrew culture, because the act made the recipient play a female role. This is extremely important. It is not that homosexual sex was considered inherently evil, but only that a submissive male was considered to have shamed himself by becoming sexually female. This is crucial to an understanding of this passage. If Christians who take this passage as a blanket prohibition against homosexuality are going to be honest, then they must also buy into the ancient worldview that women are inherently less important and not as respectable as men. Very few Christians actually believe this today. The prohibition against homosexual anal intercourse in Leviticus 18:22 cannot be removed from this fundamental ancient worldview. In other words, the prohibition is not applicable for Christians today. The laws found in Leviticus chapters 11 through 26 are part of what is called the Holiness Code. Much of this code is based on ancient Israelite ideas of purity and cleanliness, ideas that are far removed from any ideas of purity that modern Christians have. As much as we disagree with such an idea today, in the ancient world of the Hebrews, for a man to be treated like a woman, especially in a sexual act, was considered impure. So it is evident that Leviticus 18:22 describes a homosexual act, but it is also evident that the worldview of the writers is not a worldview that we accept today. Men and women are equal, and both are made in the image of God. Simply put, this passage is so completely historically and socially contextual that it cannot be applicable for us today. The seemingly clearest prohibition of homosexuality in the entire Bible has become the most irrelevant. As a quick side note, the passage found in Leviticus chapter 20 verse 13 is basically a mirror image of Leviticus 18:22 and is inapplicable to us today for the same reasons. In the next video, I will be discussing Romans chapter 1 verses 21 through 31. Until then, peace be with you. And as always, feel free to email me with any questions or comments at gaychristianteens@gmail.com. God bless.